if I may, by just, can you tell us your background information? Because there are a lot of people that won't have a full idea of your story, and it's quite an extraordinary story. So can you give us an insight into how this all started for you, first of all, Jan?
Okay. I mean, maybe a lot of people have heard this. I mean, I do get bored of hearing my own voice, but there's probably people that haven't. And my situation was that I was at 36, I had a cardiac arrest because of some immune problem. And I was told after that I would probably never be able to have children again because they put me on loads of medication, lots of heart things. And I said, that's fine, because I'd already got 2 children anyway, 10 and 7. And I was actually okay with that. I was just like super pleased to be alive. And so life went on in that vein. And I was with Rossi's father and was just kind of doing my own thing. You know, children had grown up. I was a builder and I was out building all the time with Rossi's dad. And as people do, with weekends, we'd have people over and drink wine and have a barbecue. We'd go to the pub after work, have a few pints, just doing the normal 40-year-old stuff. You know, I'd got the children, they were great. And then I was poorly, and I presumed it was something to do with my heart, whatever, again. And when I was in the hospital, I just heard in the side somebody saying something like non-viable and operation and this, that, and the other. And I said, what is it? And they said, well, it's probably, we're not sure, a fetus, but it won't be viable. So we can take it away and we can do this and we can do all the things. And I said, you mean a baby? And they said, yes. And I said, no, you're not going to do that. Absolutely not. If I'm meant to have a baby, or if this baby is meant to be, then that is what will happen. And so that was that. They weren't best pleased with me because they couldn't quite work out either, because the size of the fetus was small. It was already the shape of a baby-esque, but they were telling me he was going to have ears on his head and all sorts of different things. And so they monitored me, and they presumed I was somewhere in the region of 4 months. And so I went on, monitored. Every week I had a scan. Every week they were telling me this, that, and the other was wrong. There was intrauterine growth retardation. He wasn't growing. He wasn't doing an awful lot, really, apart from his head was growing, which was good, and his heart was strong. And then they took him out early from when they presumed he was meant to be born. They suggested it was April. Anyway, they took him out in the February, and he was tiny. He was the size of an Action Man. We actually got a photograph of him, and the Action Man was taller. You know, he was skinny, no meat on him at all. So he'd obviously, all the nutrition that he was getting went to his brain, his head. Anyway, and that went on. And then as Rossi grew, he was obviously very different from the other 2. I thought possibly because I was older, maybe I was handling things differently. But every time he went to school, there would be issues. There'd be meltdowns if he wasn't allowed to do what he wanted to do and things like this. And he also would, you know, he just didn't recognise anybody else around him. He was very impulsive. He would just literally do his own thing. And if he was told, well, that's not really a very nice thing to do, not my problem.
Yeah. Can I take it back a little bit? So when you were pregnant,
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the advice was for you at that time from the doctors?
At one point, there wasn't any, apart from what was going to be wrong.
Right.
So obviously I was exceedingly stressed, and I said to the doctor, look, I can't sleep. You know, this is not good. I've got the other 2 children. And he said, I can give you sleeping tablets. And I was horrified that he should suggest that I have tablets, sleeping tablets at that, quite strong tablets. When I was pregnant, I said, absolutely, definitely not. And he said, the only other thing is just have a little tot of brandy, which will just calm you down. It'll ease you off to sleep. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll do that. I think I did that for 3 nights. I don't like spirits at all anyway, so that was quite horrible. So that was the advice that I was given, full stop. Not once during the whole pregnancy was I asked about alcohol at all. I didn't expect to be asked, if I'm honest. I didn't expect them to ask me. I was told quite clearly about smoking, that I would end up with a small baby. And I was quite clearly told about cats, nearly had a divorce over that one because I wanted the cat out of the house, toxoplasmosis. There's lots of things, cheese, all of the rest of it. You are told about those things. And so I was, that's it.
Did you have any thought in your mind? Had anything ever been suggested to you that alcohol could impact on a fetus at all?
No, I was told now, listening to Jo Buckhard and the way she describes beers, all I knew was if she had a pint of Guinness, it was good for the baby because it's full of iron. So instead of drinking, obviously I was still working. So instead of drinking, I had a pint of Guinness.
Yeah.
Thinking I was doing good.
The right thing. Yeah. I mean, we still, FASD awareness, we still get people that are going into surgeries. They're looking at the advice, and there's still some old pre-2016 documentation where they're recommending half a glass of wine or something, red wine, or half a Guinness. I mean, the iron content in them isn't significant enough to do any good to you anyhow.
I think you're about 15.
Exactly. So, yeah. So moving on, when you finally gave birth to this amazing young man, he's certainly made up for it in growth since.
Yes.
Can I ask you, Rossi? I'm going to jump ahead because your mum's talked, and I know you've heard this on many occasions. What is your feeling as a young man? You speak very eloquently. I've heard you many a time. What is your feeling about what your mum had to go through to produce you, if you like, and come through the other side? Because I know there's an awful lot of guilt that a birth mother would have to go through when you're managing that afterwards. How did you feel about that?
Well, about her process and her experiences, I wish the knowledge was there, and not for me, just for her personal, mental health probably, and the guilt aspect of it. I wish, she still feels guilty to this day, and I, just like any parent, I'm sure will, but I feel like if she had known what she knows now, she says it all the time, we say it all the time, it would have been a completely different situation. And I feel like if one thing to make a difference is just to make it aware and out there. But for now, like how she's living now, she by far made it up with, my life and quality of life and the difference she's made in the community. And yeah, that's what I'd say.
I totally agree. And do you know what? It is absolutely lovely to hear you say that as well, because I know with our friendship groups, when we talk to a lot of, we run youth friendship groups, FASD youth friendship groups, and adult friendship groups as well. And when they talk about their birth mothers, we had the amazing Maggie May on a couple of months back, and she spoke about how she absolutely felt for her birth mother. There was no sense of a feeling blame or having any animosity towards her mother. It was because a lot of the things at that time, it was a lack of information and a lack of being taught how to stay healthy during your pregnancy. Whereas nowadays we have this information, it's still not wide enough. We know this. So let's go back to you, Jan, again, if I may. When Rossi was born, what sort of things did you notice?
Nothing particularly when he was born, apart from he sort of jerked a lot. He was really jerking all the time, and in the hospital I was really worried, saying, why is he jerking? Why is he doing that? I've got 2 other children, so I know what they do, when they're born. And they said, oh no, that's fine, that's just normal twitching. This is a lot of twitching, there's a lot of twitching going on here. But they said he was fine because he was eating. He was obviously starving because of the GERD, the intrauterine growth retardation. He was starving, so he was on it like a car bonnet. He was off with the food.
Can I just go back a bit, because there might be some people don't understand that. Can you explain that a little bit more, in a bit more detail?
What, the food?
Yes, about the growth retardation
Because he didn't grow, because 1, I'd had a cardiac arrest, 2, I'd been on lots of medication, 3, clearly now in hindsight, I'd been drinking alcohol. Rossi, and it probably killed what placenta I had. So the food was obviously not getting through to Rossi. So he was not growing. He was not getting the nutrition that he needed. So his body stopped growing. But what the nutrition that he did get was sent to the most important parts of him to stay alive, which was his brain, his heart, his lungs. Taking him out, they gave the injection steroid for his lungs to expand. So he was starving. He was gaunt. He was a skeleton, basically.
Skinny legend.
A skinny legend, darling. Yeah. That's where it all started.
Yes.
That's me again. You said you owe me. And so when he came out, I wasn't allowed to breastfeed because I was on medication for my heart. The medication that I had for my heart was something called diltiazem, which does not cause brain damage. It's not a teratogene or a poison.
Yeah.
So they allowed me to stay on that medication. The statins I had to come off of. Any other medications that could harm a baby, I was taken off of right away. And so he obviously he was starving, so I wasn't allowed to breastfeed, so they bottle fed him, and he just went through each part of the intensive care unit. He was taken straight into intensive care, and he went week at a time. Within 4 weeks he'd quadrupled his weight. He was born at 1 pound. He was 1 pound and 8 ounces, something like that. And within 4 weeks he was nearly 3 pounds, and they said he could go home. So I took him
and
home.
of course at this point you're thinking about how it relates to your heart condition, as opposed to thinking anything about fetal alcohol spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, that, obviously when he was born I wasn't thinking anything. I was thinking, oh well, there's a baby, great, live, fabulous. Didn't think anything was wrong at all until he was about two and a half. He was a bit slow on talking, things like that, but nothing major. He was very determined in what he wanted. It was a beautiful, beautiful baby, actually. And yeah.
Of course.
Did it carry on, darling?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I didn't really notice anything until he got to school. And that's when it started becoming quite clear that he was very different to the rest of the class. He was the one that you noticed. He was the one that didn't care. He was the one that just had no awareness whatsoever about anybody else on the planet apart from that dress in the dress-up corner.
And would that be around the age of sort of 5, 6?
No, 2.5, 3 years old.
Okay, so earlier in preschool.
Yeah, but bear in mind, I had already had 2 children, so I kind of knew milestones. Not that I was taking any notice of them; it was just what you do.
Absolutely.
And it became obvious with Rossi that he was absolutely different. I didn't think there was anything particularly wrong, apart from he was having epileptic. Well, they called them convulsions.
Right.
He was having those, and he had a heart murmur and a few other things. But other than that, I didn't really think anything. It was by the time he was 5 years old
Well, this is what I was going to say. It's a perfect opportunity to bring in Rossi again, because Rossi, at the age that you remember your first memories of school, what were your first moments where you noticed that you were different to other children?
Probably the social aspect of it, I think. Like, they'd be like very much what I would think they'd be very mature, which for like a 6-year-old would be weird for them to be like, that's a very mature child, like to reflect on another a way that another kid is behaving. Maybe that, and I would always be like, they're just weird, I'm the normal one, they're just really, they're a cult, and I'm just the normal person in this weird scenario. That there were tons of kids in a playground with a fence around it, and I was like, I don't want to be a part of a fence playground. I want to be inside. I'd much prefer to play with Lego or something.
Yeah.
So,
And we were talking to a group tonight, and one of the things that they were talking about, particularly with their schooling, was that they tend to gravitate towards a group of people maybe that they shouldn't, that were not the most useful people for them, the badder element in the class, because actually they got the attention from them, or that they would seek attention because they were struggling. They wanted to try and get kicked out of their classroom because that was easier rather than having to learn. And so there are so many different ways that a child develops strategies to manage social and also learning behaviors. So were there any things that you found that you used that, I mean, obviously you've got this very flamboyant extrovert character, which you've nurtured so eloquently over all these years, and we all love, and that is the Rossi that we all know and love. So what did you feel early on that you started to have to act differently to fit in or to find the group that you wanted to be around? What did you do?
well, what I'll say is I never changed myself to fit in. I never was bothered with fitting in. I think because I was introduced to my uncle at a young age, and he's quite flamboyant as well, and his husband and his background and their background, and we're a very creative family, so I was always very aware that I was going to be different from the get-go. And because mum was so big on, bringing my differences and like making me aware of it and making sure I got the help that I needed, I was also aware that I was different because of certain reasons, and that was okay. So I think I didn't really, the only thing I did was steal blue tack from the teacher's desk. But apart from that, I really didn't try to like get in trouble. Like, the only problems I would have would be in math, and I'd be like, no, this is boring, I'm leaving the class, and I'd walk out. Like, it was never something, I was never ever the bad kid.
You weren't the naughty boy. You didn't.
No, I was always, if I didn't like something in class, I'd be like, miss, I'm not doing this, I'm just going to draw in my book. And I'd go to like a separate part of the classroom, and I'd like draw in a notebook that I had.
To write stories.
Yeah, and because they didn't know what to do with me, because obviously SEN wasn't really that big back in,
back in the day.
2010, 2012. It wasn't really a thing back then. So they didn't really disturb me, and I kind of, it's funny because at core learning points, when I talk to my friends currently who are like, oh yeah, remembering like maths when in year 6 we'd have to learn this, or history class or RE, and I never did that. I was always drawing in a book. I would never be paying any attention to what the teachers were saying, and not in any way, shape or form malice or like, I don't want to do this. It was just my way of coping with it, because it was boring and I had to be there.
And it's really It's really
Yeah.
interesting and an important point as well, because I think what we've discovered with Maggie May as well was when you've got the wraparound service and support and understanding from your family and your home life, quite often what's going on is that your mother is connecting with the school and working hard for them to understand. Can you, coming back to you, Jan, can you tell us a little bit about what you had to go through once you understood the differences? We'll come on to diagnosis a little bit later, if we may. But I just want to talk about how you worked with the school to work with Rossi as well.
When we moved up to London, we lived in Norfolk, and it was quite obvious that by the time Rossi was 5, that Norfolk would be the end of him. And because it's quite obvious then that he was also gay and different and out there. And I knew that if he were to live in Norfolk, then his life wouldn't be great. Yeah. So the best place to be would be London, which is where my brother is. He mentioned.
Absolutely, yes.
So it's like, okay, we're moving. And so we moved up here. But when I came here, I was so fed up of telling teachers or being called by the teacher at the gate, sort of like hiding behind a tree, and they don't, oh, okay, here I am. I didn't say anything, because normally when you go to a different school, you'd hand over this, that, and the other and say, oh, yes, well, he does this. And I thought, this time I'm not going to. Maybe it's just people in Norfolk think he's a bit naughty, Maybe, so but within 2 days, it was, oh, Miss Griffin, can we just, court, okay, yeah, here's his paperwork, And when he was 3, we'd already had an educational psychologist come in, because he was in a little pre-prep private little school. Mm-hmm. So we had the educational psychologist coming in who had sort of studied him for a few days.
Yeah.
And said, oh yes, he's got this impulsivity, he's got all these things that he still has now. And then when we moved up to London, the teacher asked me about his difficulties and had he got an IEP, individual educational plan, all of the above things for special educational needs. I said, no. Do you think he needs one? Yes, what we'll do is we'll put him onto What's It Plus and this, that and the other. And I said, okay, fine. Do that then. And so they did, and they just kept telling me of everything he kept doing wrong. He wouldn't sit still, he wouldn't knuckle down and do maths, he would shout out things, he would keep taking blue tack was the big no.
And it wasn't white tack, for anyone getting them mixed up. Had to be blue tack, because the consistency of blue tack is completely different from white tack.
It has no gloss on it, does it?
No, it's not the same.
He didn't know that, but he does now. So there's all of these things, and then eventually I was getting quite fed up of being told all the things that he couldn't do. And I said to one of his teachers, I said, listen, how about we talk about what he can do? So he can't do maths. I get that. We all get that. You can tell him the only way he learned his times tables to please the teacher was I used to keep him off of school. I said, I will keep him off of school. You can't keep doing this to him, and I will teach him maths. And so we did grids on the floor, the tiles, and we sang songs, and he learned the times tables through poetry. He made up poems. And that's how he learnt them. And he learned
creative process that working to his strengths.
Yeah, kinesthetic. Yeah. And I kept saying to them, he's a kinesthetic learner. I still didn't quite know what was going on, but I knew that he wasn't learning the way they wanted him to. They were ripping off the corners and trying to shove him into this circle, and he was a square, he was a hexagon, he was whatever he wanted to be, but he just wasn't what they wanted him to be. And so I kept him off of school. And they said, oh, you'll get a fine. I said, then fine me, because he is learning. I'll take him out of school. I'll teach him at home. And eventually, it was a good school, so don't get me wrong, the headmistress was amazing. And she said that I could go in and into the staff room and teach him maths on the maths lesson, so he didn't disrupt. I think they were just looking for anything to keep him out of disrupting anything. And then we came up with the strategy of, if he was finding things difficult, they would give him his special little book that was all stapled together, and he could write stories and do drawings, and he was super happy with that.
Yeah.
Super happy with it. And that's what happened, and they started coming on board with the best way to help him to be the best him. And that kind of worked quite well until year 6.
What happened at year 6 then?
Well, then we had the leap to senior school, and that was absolutely not going to happen on my watch, where they were suggesting to put him. They had actually literally in year 6 managed to get an EHCP, which meant he needed 30 hours of one-to-one. They never get it, because one-to-one means, well, one-to-one whenever they can, because there's a one-to-one with somebody else, but it doesn't matter if somebody else is sitting there as well.
So when you had your EHCP, was it a statement then? I think
it was a statement.
Yeah, it was referred to it then. But when you were looking at that, in order to get that, had you got a diagnosis for anything prior to that, or was that afterwards?
I had got a diagnosis for ADHD, epilepsy. We were starting to collect at this point. I've got a little rucksack, so I was going, oh, we'll have one of them.
Yes.
It's like going into a sweet shop. So, oh, that was a little bit of dyspraxia. Should we have that today, darling? Yeah, let's take that one. Dyscalculia, behavioural issues. So I said, that's okay, whack that on there, because if that meant he got somebody to sit with him, and you had AB, they could then bring in somebody to help him, and that was in year 6. So we'd collected all of these. I'd run around different hospitals with him, and everybody I spoke to was amazing. You know, it's I think as a parent, and any parent that's sitting listening to this, you know, there are doctors that want to help. And if you ask them, say, listen, this is what I think, that with his autism, with his ADHD, with all of that, what can I do to help it? They're more than willing to write something for you, write a letter, or mind it anyway. That's in Surrey. And they would write a letter saying, this is what would help him. This is how it would help him. If he could have a fidget toy, if he could have this, if he could get up and walk about, if he could do star jumps in the playground for 5 minutes, and then bring him back in. They were all really super willing to help me with him, to give him the best, you know, rather than being another statistic. And that's something I said, I don't want him to be a statistic.
So when was the first time that the term FASD ever came up in your mind?
When I was on a computer. He'd got all of these, got my rucksack, and I took everything out one day of my rucksack, and I put it down, and I typed each one of these things each label, I typed it into the search bar. Much to my older son's annoyance, going, no, you've got to put www. I'm going, no, I haven't. I'm just about this. I'm going to put dyspraxia. I'm going to put dyslexia. I'm going to put ADHD. I'm going to put impulsivity. I'm going to put everything that Rossi had. And I pressed enter. And there came up a few, like cerebral palsy. There are lots of different things going on. And then there's a FASD, NHS Surrey FASD clinic. And I was like, oh, what's that? And I clicked on it, and there was a picture of this smiley kid, and I started reading about this boy. I think it was Andrew, actually, Sharon Jackson's son. I think it was him. I can't remember, but and I was reading about this kid that was having such a hard time, and impulsivity, lack of attention, processing speeds, all of the things that Rossi had. And that wasn't about Andrew. Everywhere that it said Andrew suddenly became, and Rossi, and Rossi, And it was at that point it was like the jigsaw puzzle. It was just like
A revelation, Eureka.
it was an absolute aha.
Yeah.
That is it. Every piece, every label he's got fits that. And so at that point, yeah, it was a bit of a shock.
And I'm sure, and I think, you know, one of the really important, and you know, this term brave, it becomes a little bit silly now, doesn't it? Because you've become such an advocate over the years, and people refer to you as brave because you're speaking out. But I think for me, it's at this point, the understanding how you feel as you get that eureka moment for your son, it's like, oh, fantastic. Yes, this makes sense. And then there's that revelation. Hold up a minute. How did you feel? What was that moment like for you?
That was a double-edged sword. It was literally, I was ecstatic. On the one hand, I knew, I thought, that's it. Now I can do something about this. And then at the same time, it was also like, oh my God. It was, I say it and I'll say it again, because it's the only way that really, that's exactly what happened. That computer screen, sheet of glass, and it was like somebody had taken a brick and literally thrown it through the screen, and all the little pieces of glass from the screen were hitting me all over my body. It was like burning, stinging, ripping. But now that the screen had gone, it was like this massively clear view as well. So there's a juxtaposed situation of happiness and sadness. And you're thinking, oh, I won't swear, nearly did, won't. It was literally, oh my God, oh my God. And I said to my daughter, I said, oh my God, read this. And she went, oh, that's Rossi. I said, it's alcohol. I've caused this. And she went, oh, Mum, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Well, it wasn't anybody else. You know, it was me. And she said, yeah, but you didn't mean to. And so it goes on.
And I think this is one of the really important points at this stage. You were 4 months in, weren't you, before you knew?
We still don't know, really.
Yeah. And that's, with there'll be birth mothers out there. There'll be people that will watch this on our YouTube channel in months and years to come. What would you say to anybody that has discovered that they're in that same position at any point in their child's life, or how would you comfort or support them in what they discover as well?
I would say to them, of course, you're going to feel absolutely terrible. Lots of expletives around that. But really, full stop, the only thing is sit yourself down and ask yourself, did you get up each of those days that you had a drink when you were pregnant, holding that glass of wine or beer or whatever it is, thinking, fantastic, I'm actually out to harm my baby? And if you say yes to that, carry you on and feel bad. I don't think there's one person, on female or father for that matter, on this planet who purposefully sets out to harm their baby. Far from it. Nobody does. Everybody loves a baby. Everybody wants to nurture a baby. Everyone wants to hold a baby. You don't want to harm that baby. So that's what I would say to anybody that is feeling bad. You did not set out to do that. The second thing is, take that upset, which is what I did, and use it. Learn about FASD and take that to the people that are with your child, the teachers, your doctors, and start the journey. And then take your child, knowing that he's got certain difficulties in his brain, certain domains aren't working properly or whatever. Work out which domains they are, help them with that, but more so, I call it find their brilliant, because every single child with FASD has got something that they excel at. Everybody in the world does, but it's with children with FASD, it's similar to autism. It's a 428 comorbid, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
They've all got something really amazing that they can do. It's singing, dancing, drawing, maths, DJing, whatever it is. Now, when you find that, forget scraping off the corners of this child. Take them and put them in that direction.
Let them be that triangle, and let them triangle their life up.
Exactly that.
And the perfect opportunity, Rossi. When did you discover your strengths? What would you say are your great qualities? Your great strengths. Go on, you can really enlarge it now.
The mic.
No. Okay, so obviously I said our family's very creative and flamboyant. And when I was little, I would always record myself doing makeup. And my sister was a makeup artist in college, yeah. And I used to take her makeup, again, impulsivity and, you know, lack of control.
Haven't been told not to.
And she had this leather bag full of makeup, and it was like a box. I have that upstairs. And I used to take that box and basically make myself look like I had a black eye. I thought I looked gorgeous and glamorous. But anyway, I realised then that I really liked makeup. And then Mum realised that too, and realised I liked drawing. So then put me into I went to my primary school. And then from my primary school, I went to a performing arts school. And then from there, I just kind of did creativity.
Lovely. And what's at the moment, you're a 20-year-old young man venturing out into the world. What are your ambitions?
Take your time. Today.
My ambitions are to own my own company, to teach other people with hidden disabilities how to do makeup, and bring awareness to FASD. And my main one is to be a really rich makeup artist.
Who are the people that you follow that you admire and respect and want to follow in their footsteps?
Oh, I've met a lot of people in my life, luckily, that I have admired from like afar.
Yeah.
But mainly my uncle was like a big impact, and I really wanted to, because he was living like the glamorous, well-known life. And I would always look up to him and be like, he's got like all this and I'm going to be like that. And probably him is my main inspiration. But for like social media and people in the spotlight, probably Dominic Skinner, who's a makeup artist.
Tina Earnshaw.
Tina Earnshaw is a makeup artist who was responsible for Titanic. I was lucky enough to study under her. And yeah, people like that. My teachers at my college that I'm at, Brushstrokes Academy, they work on film sets 24/7. So they're major inspirations to me. So,
and what I'd like to understand, because there are many aspiring individuals that will be watching this and looking to you at your age, that they might be sort of 16, 17, and they might be really struggling at what they're trying to achieve at the moment. What strategies do you use at the moment that you're aware of, at least certain strategies that you use when you're working on what you want to do and what you're aspiring to?
Main thing is obviously social media is quite a major, literally a major part of our Gen Z generation. And like the phones never leave our hands. So I'd probably say apps are quite a big thing for me. So like banking apps, anything that help me with my money is a really big thing, because I
It
need
is a really big
help
thing, yeah.
wherever. Budgeting is like a really big thing. Everyone knows this.
Yeah.
For people with FASD. So find a good app that you like that
Does it
helps
work,
you
though?
realize
Does it work?
I'm on the journey of learning how to budget, and having something that reflects and shows me, you know, how I do that is learning.
Yeah.
I'd also say find someone that you can trust with
Back to me.
with said money, or business accounts, any sort of serious information, like, you know, all your details. But mainly probably find people that understand you as a person. So like in social situations, find a good group of people, because if you find your group, I was lucky enough to find 5 girls that I get on, like, literally house on fire. We really got on well. We're all in the same college, all want to do the same thing. And the thing with FASD is you build bonds so quickly, but you can also, you know, those bonds can fade over time. And we've been friends for a good 1.5 years now, and find people who know your disabilities and your difficulties and can be aware of the things that you say and pull you up on it and say, listen, that's, you know, in a business venture in the future, if you say that, that is something that's going to cause a problem, and have them bring you up on it, I think is a really, really big
And
thing.
possibly understand the fabrications
and teach. A major thing is teach anyone you meet about FASD, I feel. Because
about yourself.
Well, yeah, because it's not just about me, it's also about, maybe they'll come in contact with someone who doesn't even know they have FASD.
Yeah.
And because I taught that person about it.
How often have you, sorry to interrupt, how often have you had to explain to somebody what FASD is, and they're like, well, what is that?
Every day.
Yeah.
The t-shirt.
Every day. I have a clothing brand which makes it a bit more easy, so it's called No Brainer Apparel. And
plug.
Oh, listen, I'm trying to explain. And it basically has, you know, FASD and then the meanings of each disability. And some days when I'm just like, I can't be asked to explain, I'll put a t-shirt on and walk out. And then it kind of also brings awareness to it. And
you're owning that. You're owning it. You're absolutely. And I think this is where there'll be some people that watch this that have just recently got a diagnosis, and they've just understood for the first time what FASD is, and they're probably feeling intimidated by it. They're probably worried what that means for their future. But they see yourself, they see the likes of Maggie May, who, you know, we've worked with and works as an ambassador for our charity. So, and you're a great advocate for it because you own it. You're comfortable in yourself and who you are. And that is such a big part of it. What sort of advice would you give that person that's just discovered that they've got a diagnosis of FASD?
It's not a life-threatening disease. A lot of people treat it like it's the be-all and end-all, but it really, genuinely, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. And it's like Mum said earlier, it's a double-edged sword. But you can have so much freedom in creativity or academics. You know, it really does, you know, not mean your world ends. And if you find one niche aspect of your life that you really think this is, it could be dog grooming, it could be literally anything, find it and nurture it, and you'll find a way to get through.
Is it also a case possibly of accepting it and thinking, okay?
A main thing is acceptance. You can't move on without accepting it. It took me years. Well, literally years, I'm still working through it. And as I get older, you realize even more as you're growing into an adult and going through that journey of like learning, okay, maybe this actually translates to this when you're an adult instead of being a child, because just like transitioning from, you know, 15 to 20, how having the understanding to be like, okay, this is something I struggle with, but
we often say, don't we, we sort of go, okay, fine. So a lot of people with FASD have got global delay. And so when Rossi's having, not necessarily a meltdown, because he's 20 now, don't have real meltdowns, it just tells me what to do. It's a case of, I sometimes say to him, listen, it's not you, it's that particular part of your brain isn't necessarily working.
yeah.
So you've got to kind of maybe shift your thinking pattern and go somewhere in your brain that is working. And equally, you've got to remember, Rossi, I often say it to him, that you are a 20-year-old man, yet sometimes you're 10. And at the moment, majoritively, you're 16. So we're all really excited about this because that means it's safe, which is bloody fantastic. Stupid, but safe sometimes. But it's having Rossi being able to recognise that he's got this global delay. And I will go, 10-year-olds out, come to play. I said, do you want to have a little chat with 10-year-old? And that's some way that we've worked out that he can actually.
And don't, oh, for God's sake, don't be embarrassed of it, because it's not something to be embarrassed of.
What are you going to say?
Don't be embarrassed of your FASD, because for the longest time I was embarrassed of it. And I was like, oh, don't say that. That's so embarrassing. That's so awkward. Why would you say that? I'd be ashamed of it. And don't. It's not something to be ashamed of. It is how you are. It's a part of you, and it's never going to change, and you need to accept it.
And do you find once you accepted it, it was easier to relate to people that didn't understand it?
Yeah.
Well?
Yeah. All of my friends.
For example, yeah, your friends, your social group. But I'm looking also in the workplace, and people need to understand what you might struggle with and why. But certainly at school, when a lot of these individuals are getting diagnosis of FASD, maybe in their sort of teens, that crucial time in one's personal development, and it can either have such a negative implication on them, but when they see you talk about, own it, don't be embarrassed about it, talk about it freely, because educating as you are, you are both collectively, I love the way that you both share this journey. And that's such an important thing. I think, any parent shares a journey with their children, and it's a very different journey for each child. But by sharing that journey, you both enjoy the journey and the successes, and that you can share the failures as well. But those moments when they might be the smallest little achievement that is the greatest joy for a mother, and you see that when you're sharing that together. And that's what's lovely about what you both do. You share this journey so well. So with that, with the situation that you're in, where do you see? I've seen that you've got plans to do a road trip when you're healthy and fit and ready to do this. Tell us a little bit about that road trip that you're looking at doing.
Well, it started off, didn't it, in 2019, and Rossi and I like to travel, and just like getting in the car, going. We'd go to Paris, we'd go anywhere, just because you can.
Wales,
yeah, just get up in the morning and just, hey, do you want to go to Wales? Let's go, And so we'd do all that sort of stuff. And I said, wouldn't it be great to get a camper van and go off to, we really liked Dick and Angel on the chateau. We thought, oh, we'll get a camper van and we'll travel to them, go hi, because they clearly want to meet us. And we were going to do this, and I said,
hello, who wouldn't want to meet me?
Angel would love him, and I'd just help dick build. And anyway, so we were going to do this, and then it was like, oh no, what would be an even better idea? Because by this point, you know, I knew Sandy, and I've been doing a few things for FASD, and I thought, there's people all over the world with FASD. Why not go and find somebody, loads of them on the internet, on Facebook, and go meet them in France? And we could just video, because I've done a few videos of Rossi for a website, of really asking Rossi what it was like having FASD. And because he's so eloquent, we kind of knew that that would be a really good thing for other people to watch, to say, oh, okay, so that's what he's thinking at the time. And I would really pin him down, like, but what's going through your mind? Why? What happened at that point that you had the meltdown? What was happening? And wouldn't it be great to go and meet all these different people? So that's what we did. And then lockdown.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
But
here we are. We have teamed up with our good friend Joe
Garofalo.
Yeah.
Voice in a Million, because Rossi does singing as well, as you know. And Joe now is with FASD's Hub Scotland, and she also does Voice in a Million every year. And she didn't realise when Rossi was first in that, when he was 2014, so he was 12, 13. She remembers this kid that was like, yeah, I know that one. I know that one. I know that one.
Yeah, I was always trying to be centre stage.
Yeah.
And Joe was always like, okay, that's great, but we're going to use your power as side stage. And I was like, okay.
He wanted front mic, everything. And it was only this last year when Rossi did it again, and Joe found out that her daughter Lissy had FASD, that she recognised Rossi. She said, now I know, now I get it. So we kind of teamed up with her, and hoping, all being well, it's been shifted back a few times, to go on the road trip in March. It's just getting the camper van, March next year.
And we've got we've had amazing donations on our GoFundMe, and it's just been so, like, the whole journey has just been so exciting to see the number grow, and the people support us. And if anyone is watching from that, you're amazing, and thank you so much. But also, one thing that I wanted to say is that Joe Garofalo's also doing quite big things for the FASD. She's doing something called the FASD Choir.
Yeah.
And that's going to be going live very soon. Next year when we do Voice in a Million, there's going to be, stuff for VM that also includes FASD. So
I think she's doing a song for September.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Well, listen, when you come to do your road trip, come down and stay with us down at Kent.
You're on the list.
We'll tie it in with one of our Leeds Castle activity days, so everybody can get to meet you. You can come down and join us with our family friends day down at Leeds Castle.
Amazing. We've got some people up in Manchester as well, and up in Scotland as well. Come over here. And it was all getting very, very big, which was a little bit daunting, I think. So we had to pull it down a little bit.
Scale it down.
Reel it in a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, reel it in a little bit, because it's got a little bit pressurised.
You're going to have to do.
And it's meant to just be a fun thing to go around and say hi to it. Go into some schools, Rossi speaking with Lissy, and saying, listen, guys, peer groups, be careful, be aware, this is what can happen. And, the more young people who hear about it in school, college age, the better.
Well, I have to say, you're both amazing advocates. We love having you. You're always a joy as well whenever we meet up. Next month, we've got on our webinar, we've got some FASD young adults that'll be talking about their experiences. Rossi, if you wanted to join us on that as well, it would be lovely to have you. There'll be a whole bunch talking about living with FASD and looking at the positives, always looking at the positives about that, and trying to support those that are really struggling with trying to find their own identity within the FASD community. But in the meantime, thank you both so much. Look after yourselves. and we'll see you soon. Thanks
Take
very
care.
much. And thank you all for joining us again tonight. If you'd like to see any of the other films that we produce and videos that we produce, please come and join us on our YouTube channel. In the meantime, good night. Take care.